So after finishing that section with a good amount of hope, now let's take a nosedive into the fucking abyss with the Dark Ages of Sonic. This is, honestly, I think that the title of it is a bit ridiculous and over the top. Like, it makes it sound like the black fucking plague of, like, video games, which it wasn't. There were, like, in this time, those spin-off games like Secret Rings and Black Knight came out, and there were some other problems with it, but I feel like the only real contributors to the Dark Age really were two games. The first one is Shadow the Hedgehog, which is, you know, I remember that they had a sort of voting poll for it, where, you know, if a Sonic character would get a spin-off, its own game, who would it be? And Shadow won. Like, it's obvious that Shadow would win because he's really fucking popular in the franchise. Okay, so the idea was, well, Shadow is a different character to Sonic. He's not, like, lighthearted, he's not optimistic or anything like that, so how do you translate that to his own game?
There's that damn fourth Chaos Emerald.
Okay, well, I have an idea. Let's give him a fucking gun. Yeah, let's give him a gun. And not only that, but let's, like, have him go around and he fucking kills people. And, like, if anything about edginess that you would get from the comments, I think really come from this game, because this game is fucking edgy as fuck. Like, it really is, like, the crawling in my skin of this franchise, and like, again, it takes those moments from Adventure 2 with, you know, like, Maria and New York and stuff, and I can't take it seriously in this, because you have Shadow be this ridiculous, over-the-top, brooding dude, and it's not just that, like, they try this whole, like, you can go your own route with being a good guy or a bad guy, and in between, like, all these different endings and stuff, but it just doesn't work, and it just adds up to this, like, confusing mess. That's, yeah, this game is just, yeah, this game wasn't really good. And, yeah, I mean, there can't really be, I mean, you also get stuff like missions where it's, like, iconic missions, like, kill the president, you know? Or there's other stuff, like, what possibly could they have in the game that would also be able to be misconstrued?
Disgusting black creatures, get out of my sight.
Jesus fucking Christ, let's just get this over with. Yeah, Sonic 2006, also known as 06, I think is the reason why it's called the Dark Age. Because this game is so unanimous, like so known in the fucking internet and in the gaming community for being a dumpster fire. Honestly, I don't want to sit here and just waste hours and hours talking about this. Like, I really don't want to do that to you, but apparently there were some ideas, because around that time a lot of games were becoming more serious, more story heavy and all that stuff. And I get, like, you know, we want to make Sonic more serious, more story heavy, we want him to feel like a bigger character. But they make it in the worst possible way. Like, oh my god, especially when they make one of the main characters, like, the human equivalent of a peeled potato. Like, Elise is the fucking worst character I've ever seen in Sonic, I think, out of almost any video game. Worse than Chris, like, no joke, she's way worse than Chris. She is so annoying, she has the most punchable face imaginable, and she gets kidnapped constantly. Plus, she's a furry, but I'll get to that in a sec. Yeah, I mean, it's not all bad, honestly. Like, the CG intros for the three main characters are really fucking cool and really good. And, I think Silver being put into the mainline games was really good, because Silver is now a lot more of a prominent character, he's a lot more loved nowadays, and they do a lot better job with him being this real fish out of water and appreciating all of the stuff that there is in the past, like the nature and everything. Like, that's a real cool thing. It also established Shadow as a more, like, active character with gun, being this, like, neutral, cool character and stuff, and that's really good. I'd say Mephiles is probably still one of the best villains we've gotten in the Sonic game. Like, he's edgy as fuck, but he's powerful. And I think like his biggest achievement is he kills Sonic. Like it's not like no joke with other characters, like in other games. He kills Sonic. He fucking kills him. He's dead. Like no, not even Eggman can say that he killed Sonic. Like a lot of video game characters can't even say like, oh yeah, the villain of this game kills the protagonist. You know, not a lot of good games can say that at least. But yeah, that's still one of the things I still find like this game still holds up in. I mean, it fails in almost every other fucking aspect, but I'll at least give it that. And honestly, there isn't a lot that Elise could do to make me hate it even more, you know? Like, it's not like wait, no, Elise, what are you doing? No, 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 no!
What the fuck?
Well, at least we'll always have this moment.
Chaos control.
Sonic Unleashed is a game that's in a bit of a weird place. It's technically still part of the Dark Age, but it's way different from the games that came before it, especially the one we just talked about. But it's also not really a part of the whole modern Sonic that we have right now. The gameplay was changed to the boost formula that we kind of know today, but the problem that this game had was that it also introduced a second playstyle, which I think if it hadn't done that, it probably would have been received a lot better, and that gameplay style is the Werehog. And don't get me wrong, as a kid, like I fucking loved like all werewolves, vampires, and shit, and I kind of still do. And as a kid, I was like, holy shit, Sonic's a werewolf, that's fucking awesome, this game is the best ever. But now as you grow up and you see, that's kind of a weird thing to do. And especially when the gameplay isn't really that fun. Like, the whole idea of Sonic is to go fast, and I think the day stages in this game really accomplish that. Like, they're fucking great. But the Werehog stages are not that great, really, because the thing that doesn't work with Sonic is slow, melee combat-oriented gameplay. Like, I don't get why they thought that would be such a good idea. And that's really a problem because this game starts out really well. The opening animation is so fucking good. And I say overall that the story is really enjoyable. It's a bit simpler, but it still has a good amount of serious moments. While it still is in the sort of semi-human world, even though the humans are a bit more cartoonish, which I do prefer over games like Adventure in 06. I'm still not a fan of like Sonic interacting with actual humans. Like, I like the idea more of, you know, they're fucking cartoon characters, so in their world it would be logical that there would be, you know, cartoon animals as citizens. But other than that, I feel like Unleashed is still a really good game that just kind of gets looked at a bit too negatively because of the Werehog. But other than that, it's really fucking solid. And the plot mostly exists out of Sonic trying to stop Eggman, and he can breathe in space in the cutscene for some reason. And Eggman then tricking Sonic and capturing him and using the Chaos Emerald's power to crack open the Earth. And that's gonna let him create Eggman Land because he releases a big spirit kaiju, and because he shoots that out of a very suggestively designed weapon, and then Sonic turns into a fucking werewolf because of like something negative energy. I mean, I'd still think that the design looks cool, and the animated short Night of the Werehog is really, really fun to watch. But yeah, I'd say overall it's still a really good game, just with some problems. Oh boy, well, after we got rid of the dark ages of Sonic, I wanted to talk about, well, technically what people sort of saw as the second Dark Age. I did like try to get rid of all the spin-off games earlier, but this is technically a sort of spin-off game that I feel deserves its own big sort of spot that I want to talk about it for a second, and that's Sonic Boom. Sonic Boom was made by Big Red Button in association with Sega, and the idea was to have a more a bigger adventure open world game with a lot more lore and stories and characters, and that it would be brought over to like the big consoles and it would be this cool new take. But Yeah, I don't know if anyone's read the stories about what happened, but Sega basically just fucked Big Red Button over. Honestly, I want to talk about Boom in a separate thing, like a video or something, because it really deserves more attention than that. But just to quickly summarize it, Sega had a deal with Nintendo where they had to make 3 exclusive games for Nintendo consoles. And the first one, we had Mario and Sonic at the Olympic Winter Games of 2014. Second one was Sonic Lost World, which is coming up in a bit. And, well, the problem was, Sega didn't have a third game at the moment yet. The only game that was then in development was Sonic Boom. So they forced Big Red Button, which had made an engine and gameplay for the bigger consoles to allow all these big combos and flashy team gameplay and all that fun stuff, and they forced them to port it over to the Wii U. The problem is that the Wii U was a piece of shit, and it couldn't support it. And not only that, they had about half a year, I think, to make their deadline. So I think we all know how this game turned out, that it got rushed into oblivion. And yeah, when it came out, it was a blow almost as fucking bad as 06. Like, holy shit, this game was a mess. I mean, at least the cartoon show was still pretty enjoyable, I'd say, at least. After this, though, there were 2 other games for the 3DS, which were Sonic Boom Shattered Crystal and Sonic Boom Fire and Ice, and these games were made by Sanzaru, you know, the people who made Sly 4, and the less talk about that game, the better. I'm not gonna start a Sly video in this thing. But those were actually kind of okay. And I am still happy to report that Big Red Button did not go down because of Sonic Boom, because of its terrible sales and reception, and they are actually now making successful VR games. Actually, Arc Slinger is now been announced, I think, recently, and it does seem like there is a good amount of excitement for that, so I am happy that this is not another one of those stories where a developer got screwed over and was forced to close their studios. Just thank God for that, and I completely understand if Big Red Button would just never want to even talk to Sega ever again after they screwed them over. Like, what a fucking mess. Now, after all of that mess, we finally arrived to our final stop, Modern Sonic, and the game that really kicked off Modern Sonic was Sonic Colors. Now, Sonic Colors holds a special place in my heart because it was really the first modern game, like big modern game that I played, and it's still my favorite to this day. And honestly, I can completely see the complaints that this game gets, because what I think it really did well is after all of like the big complicated stuff that they tried to do, or like all the edgy and stuff, like after all of that, to just go back, make a simple story and a simple game, and I think it works. It's not perfect, definitely not, but it works. Like, it's just Sonic and Tails trying to stop Eggman, it's lighthearted, and it's colorful. Especially, like, the intro animation and Reach for the Stars gets me fucking emotional every time I see it. I think it's so goddamn good. This game also introduced the Wisps, and the Wisps are a bit of a talking point, more in the recent stuff, because after this game, they were kind of okay received, and the thing is that I want to talk with the other games as well, is with Sega at the moment, if something does not get negative reception, in their eyes it is good. So it will come back, and the Wisps keep coming back. Like, after this game, like, Lost World hit this entire thing where the Wisps were brought back with specific levels. They were implemented in the main thing of forces, like they were the weapons and the boost fuel, and honestly, even though I actually really like them, they kind of should slow down on them. Like, having them be the items in Team Sonic Racing, perfectly fine. I think that it was way better than generic items, and I think it's fine. But they do get overused, especially with how they get used in the games, because each of the Wisps has a colorful design and a sort of aesthetic with them, and they each give Sonic powers. Like, you have Boost, you have Drill, you have Laser, and they help you traverse the levels in different ways. But it doesn't really feel like a power-up that just, you know, like, oh, and this, like, I can just move around freely and then use them. and in these situations just as how I see fit. Like, no, a lot of them feel a bit like incredibly situational, especially ones like Cube, where there are like really specific parts in a level where you can only use that wisp at that point. And like then it starts to feel less like a power-up and more like, oh, you're in this specific area, okay, use this thing for 5 seconds and move on. Which I think is a little bit annoying. This game also has its final boss, which I think is actually a pretty fun final boss, but the problem with it is that it's the same final boss for, I think, the past 4 games, I think? Because they keep reusing it, not only, like, its entire gameplay style in Lost World. I actually think it was easier in Lost World, but it's like they have an incredibly similarly designed boss in Forces. It's like, why do we keep using this boss? Like, it's not an amazing one, it's not revolutionary, so why won't they switch it up? Other than that, I think Color's gameplay is pretty solid. It takes the boost from Unleashed and expands upon it, and I really like the boost gameplay. It's my favorite style out of the moment that out of all of them that we've had, boost works the best for me. I do admit that this game's writing is, and this is one of the big problems that we have with the modern games, is the writing. It's really, like, kid-minded, with, like, lighthearted dialogue, and, more jokish stuff, but a lot of the jokes just don't land.
And you might know him, who they call Baldy Nosehair.
Baldy Nosehair? That's the best thing I've heard all day. I gotta remember that one.
I know, I've already written it down.
Please remember, all planets in Eggman's incredible interstellar amusement park are, as far as you know, wholly owned properties of Eggman Enterprises and its subsidiaries. All unauthorized photography, video reproduction, or shutting down of generators is strictly prohibited. Thank you!
Eggman, I am going to save this planet, and I am going to free these aliens! No copyright law in the universe is going to stop me!
And I can completely see for like having a lighthearted tone, but that also really suffers when you have like these serious moments, like when Sonic and Tails have to face each other because Tails is mind controlled. And honestly, this problem, like I'd say that this is sort of a problem in Colors, but this really becomes a problem in Lost World and Forces, which I'll get to. But yeah, honestly, I do have a little bit of a bias towards this game, but I still really think it holds up and is really good. Now, of course, as long as you have played the superior DS version like myself. But yeah, let's move on now to Generations. Sonic Generations feels like the definition of what is going on with modern Sonic, and it's just nostalgia, 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 nostalgia. And like, it's the entire gimmick of this game, where you have modern Sonic and classic Sonic now. Where the plot of the game is that the Eggman has released the Time Eater, which is a monster that forces the two Sonics to come together. And yeah, this is younger Sonic, keep that in mind for later because it's gonna be brought up. So the idea is then that you get to play as both gameplay styles. You get the boost formula, which is improved from Colors. It's actually a lot more fun in Generations than as well, I'll admit to that. And the classic 2D side-scrolling gameplay from the classic games. But it's not really, like, I still find it fun. Like, the classic gameplay is fun, but it's just not the same as the actual classic games. Which I kind of find odd. Like, how are you guys not able to recreate the classic games? Like, but whatever. Okay, that's not really the point. Yeah, back to the story of this game, there really is none. Like, it's made for Sonic's 20th anniversary, and they treat it as it's Sonic's birthday and his friends are coming to celebrate. And they all get kidnapped, and they get stuck in this colorless white void that is also sort of like the main hub world, and it looks boring as hell. And Sonic goes back to all of these classic levels from his past. You know, and again, one of the problems with Sonic that we have now is these levels keep fucking coming back. It's like Green Hill, chemical plant, like Jesus, like we don't need Green Hill. Please just stop giving us Green Hill. We get it, it's iconic, just stop. And you get to play through these levels as both characters, but it's actually kind of cool because classic Sonic is being able to be used in modern levels, which wasn't able to before, and you can really see how these levels would then play out if you had the old gameplay style, which is, it's a cool idea. And you even have like different updated versions of the boost gameplay in levels where they didn't have them. You know, like you go back to, again, the classic games, and even in like the adventure games that they get used, and it's a cool concept. There's a lot of inventive stuff that is being done with it, especially like they also bring back bosses from previous games, like the Egg Sentinel, you have the Egg Dragoon from Unleashed. And it actually brings me to this next topic. It's not just two Sonics, there are also two Tails, which, I mean, I don't really get the point of classic Tails, doesn't really amount to anything as a character. But there's two Eggmans, and they actually like kind of talk about the whole Robotnik thing with Eggman, which I think is funny, and they're like the changing characters. But I do feel like the classic designs kind of suffer because they, like, in the classic games they looked fine, they looked cool, but if you bring them over to like the 3D that we have now, they look off. Like, they don't look that good, I feel. I mean, I kind of feel that classic Sonic looks kind of fine, but Tails and Robotnik don't really. They look weird. And the game does kind of suffer from, like, in the final act, it's this big inspirational, you can do this, Sonic, and all of Sonic's friends come together, and they cheer him on. But it's one of the most awkward fucking scenes I've ever seen, where they have all of these characters quickly come out and basically say the same thing, and they just stand on the sidelines. Again, like a problem that we have with the modern games is that Sonic's friends don't fucking do jack shit. They are there and they will comment, and in the final boss, all they can say is, there's a fucking homing missile coming, Sonic, be careful. And yeah, that's it. Like, and then the game ends and classic Sonic goes back to his time, and it's like, yeah, you know, enjoy your future, it's gonna be great. Which, I mean, yeah, it's definitely not as bad as like people would meme it about it, but I just think it's like that they put that line in there. It's like, oh yeah, there's hope, there's hope. What I will give them respect for is they fucking put Crisis City in this game as one of the modern stages, which, like, I'll give them respect that they even acknowledge 06. Like, holy shit, you guys have balls. Yeah, so honestly I do feel like Generations is still really being, I think, gets looked at as the most popular and like the best modern Sonic game we've gotten. I can definitely see why, but like, I also feel like Generations, like, the success comes from the fact that it does so much nostalgic shit, and yeah, it's a double-edged sword. It's really a double-edged sword.